A warm welcome to this workshop here, to this panel here on empowering public institutions, digital administration between ambition and implementation. And it's a fascinating journey. I've seen a lot of faces in the audience who are in one or the other way also included in this way to improve the important public sector on this digital journey. And as you all know, that parts of the big tech ideology is not pro-strong state unless they can profit from it directly. So we should make a lot of strong signs signs of life that we are very much alive and a very strong community. I just present the panel in a second. Doris Allhutter. Doris works here at the Austrian Academy. So this is her home institution. She works in the Institute for Technology Assessment, which was my first professional contact when I was a public servant I became a public servant in 1992. And since then, ITA has really made, and also before, a great job in doing advisory, but also critical work for and with the public administration. She's an economist, but her PhD is in political science. But she has postgraduate training at the Institute of Advanced Studies in Vienna, had a number of research stays abroad, and she's an expert on ICT development and ICT use within socio-technological systems. Next to her is Klemens Himpele. He's the CIO of the city of Vienna. Klemens is also an economist from the University of Cologne. In his office, there is a Geisbock logo hanging, or at least...
That is not true.
Oh yes, in your old office there was the Geisbock.
But I'm a supporter of SC Freiburg. Sorry to disappoint you.
Oh my goodness! But I think I still have a photo from that. But I will have to look up in my digital archive. He's one of the numerous German-born top executives in the city of Vienna, because the city of Vienna is hugely diverse in international regards. So that's a sign of quality. Klemens was the head of the Economics and Innovation Department of the city of Vienna until he became CIO 6 years ago. Ursula Rosenbichler, she's the head of the Austrian School of Government, a small but impactful organization within the Federal Public Service. This is about training and intimate discussions about things like digitalization among the top echelon of the public administration in Austria. So they really spend days together to learn from each other and learn from people like you, external readers, and this is a fantastic thing. Before, she was responsible for public service sector innovation in the Federal Chancellery. I will not read all the 5 studies she made, but she was then in cultural management, on the psychoanalysis and learning interface, going to system theory, organizational development, and what's a better use of all that, including psychoanalysis, than to go to the public sector development. And the fourth and last is Mirko Tobias Schäfer. He's the science lead of the data school at Utrecht University. Utrecht is spelled rightly. Okay. His academic background are media and culture studies with a PhD from Utrecht. Then he had a variety of research stays in different places. And now he has an associated professorship, and running the data school means a lot of interaction with public service actors in the Netherlands and beyond. You are also visiting professor at the University of Helsinki. I'm a research funder, and day one digital humanism activist. And the topic is straightforward: empowering public institutions, digital administration between ambition and implementation. When I started as a public servant, as said already, in ministries in the early 90s, we had like that and like that desktop PCs and internet and emails. But I admit I then developed a secret love, especially for the fax machine, which was in working all day. Everybody, all public servants loved the fax machine. The beeping, the scratching sounds it made. At the beginning, I think there was even thermal paper. I'm not sure anymore, but I think in the early 90s there was still thermal paper. And I started to love the analog Aktenlauf. For the non-Germans, the Aktenlauf is the circulation of the official files within a ministry or within the city of Vienna. And then these were kind of envelopes with a lot of paper in it. And on the envelopes, there were a lot of Einsichtsbemerkungen. These were scribblings on the files by all kinds of colleagues and superiors in different colors, some more readable than the others. And these scribblings meant, I am smarter than you, or do not dare enter my territory, or this initiative will never see the light. So that you will report also about this kind of how difficult it can be in a competitive, non-competitive, competitive environment, which is the public service. Yeah? And it was sometimes for me as a foot soldier not easy for me to retrieve these files. For example, my first boss tended to hoard them in her drawer. So this was an interruption of the whole data flow when the files were hoarded in the drawer. So this all shows progress is inevitable if you only choose a long enough observation period. And then the digital economy, the big ones, they started to speed up things. Public institutions, now I become a little more formally, are among the organizations most directly confronted with the task of implementing the digital revolution. They are confronted with many challenges, high expectations, critical uses, public discourse, responsibility towards the public, legal frameworks, not moving or perhaps moving fast, but never break things, please. Budget constraints, legacy systems, call for open source, and so on. And we ask today how public administrations are able to build capacity, skills, institutional arrangements. And we ask how Austria, the Netherlands, other countries, city of Vienna are dealing with these challenges. There are numerous success factors. I'm a happy digital inhabitant of the city of Vienna. It's so easy to get key documents and other things. It's so easy to get a good answer to your question. Klemens will report about it. But there are also problems, and I quote from a project homepage by Allhutter and colleagues. Quote, collaboration between departments and administrative levels is often insufficient, with interfaces, standards, and shared objectives rarely being aligned and coordinated. This leads to redundancies and a lack of interoperability. So I can all confirm that. We learned a lot, for good or bad, in the COVID-19 time and with the Data Governance Act and all these things. But there are solutions to that. And you have exactly 15 minutes in your keynote to not only raise additional issues, but to provide report about solutions, where in some of them you have been instrumental, dear Mirko. Thank you.
And I try to solve everything within 15 minutes. So let's get into that quite fast and bold. I'm very happy to be here and that we have a session on civil service, because that's one part that is quite overlooked when I'm looking at the other lectures and keynotes. There's something that really wraps together civil service with government, and there's a huge difference between both of them. So I'm from the Utrecht Data School. We do research a little bit different than most of our colleagues in academia. We think that you can investigate phenomena better if you're there where they manifest, so mostly outside of the university. And our strategy is to immerse in a societal sector like civil service or media industries in our case, investigate, and then find a way to intervene and to change things. And our secret motto is, we do not preach in lecture halls, we engage in the field. With that said, let's have a look at our politicians. Bruce Schneier said this morning that he loves how the EU is regulating. But what we're seeing currently is the EU is backpedaling from its own regulation and undermining it. One example would be the digital omnibus, and another would be to sacrifice regulation in the name of innovation, to simplify things or to weaken their own laws. For instance, the GDPR, and providing massive access to European data for AI companies to mine them. So our politicians not the politicians, Sam Altman and his colleagues live rent-free in the heads of our top leaders, and that might be a problem, which you can also see that Ursula von der Leyen is taking over verbatim the claims that there will be human reasoning around this year. Last year, it was in 25. So let me zoom in. If you look at the discourse on AI governance, we have approximately 3 layers. One is the parliamentary discourse, where a lot of light is shined upon. Parliamentary deliberation, laws that are issued, and then it trickles down. So there's an idea of many people that legislation is a trickle-down process, but that doesn't work as well. It does work just as bad as trickle-down economy, actually. So there is an organizational level in the middle. I call it the meso level. And there you see organizational efforts for translating regulation into effective practices that is actually needed to make legislation or policy work. And in case of our public organizations, they also have to implement AI while also trying to clarify the rules of AI governance and make them operational. But that sector is mostly not regarded. That is pretty much, it's a huge field, and it's not only relevant for civil service, but also for our educational sector and other public institutions. But that is the one that gets pretty much the least of attention. And then we have the individual layer that also gets attention. That is very similar to the tobacco or environmental discourses, where you say, if you learn how to use AI well, everything will be fine. And you will only apply it ethically, and you will avoid other uses. So the problem is individualized. So we have those 2 fields of attention. On the one hand, the parliamentary discourse that is considered relevant, and then the individual layer where it's made your personal problem. Let's zoom in on this middle level. That is really interesting. And in this middle level, we zoom in on civil service in particular. And what do? So civil service finds itself between a rock and a hard space. They are between volatile politics and vulnerable citizens. And their task is to translate policy into effective operations. They have to clarify and explain and apply the rules. And there comes a factor in that is also under-regarded, namely administrative discretion. So you might have rules, but rules can be applied in different contexts differently. That doesn't mean that we apply the rules to anybody and we just interpret them favorably for our friends. That is not what that means. That means to look at the different set of rules, which are always inherently incomplete, and with the expertise of the civil servant, they will be applied in a way that is hopefully just and accountable. And that is something that is not easily to translate into computer operations, which is the big promise of big tech, that they can operationalize it, because they say, bureaucracy is just rules, and artificial intelligence also just rules. And they completely overlook this extreme expertise, investive labor of clarifying, explaining, and applying the rules under the pretext of administrative discretion. On top, these organizations, I mean, this was already a lot of tasks, but on top of that, they're committed to public and democratic values. And sometimes the volatile politics that are on top of them are in contradiction of these public and democratic values. So this is a very difficult position to find yourself in. And in addition, they are tasked with being more careful in the use of artificial intelligence and other technology than other organizations. Plus, because they have a demographic change that is just scaring, they are tasked with innovating their public administration. Not only because of demographic change, also because you just don't want to go to a bureaucratic office. And that's the beauty of living in the Netherlands. We can do basically everything digitally. So yes, when my son was born, I had to go there in person to say I have a son. But I think that was pretty much all I ever had on personal contact with public administration. So there is in this process a lot of labor that is invisible. I like to call it shadow labor, and it's not a term that is coined by me. We use this term for a lot of things that are taking place on digital platforms and on the internet: shadow work, ghost work, invisible labor. And this translation of policy into effective operation is something that takes place in the back end, behind the scene of the AI hype. Most people are unaware of how much labor, personal investment goes into that. But it includes engaging your employees, your co-workers, the citizens, repairing incomplete, faulty algorithms. That's something that's also underreported, how often algorithms are just not doing what they're doing immediately, and that they need constant care and work. The data sets need to be updated and maintained. The model needs to be improved. There needs to be inspection done, whether the model still does what it promises to do, etc. Another aspect is looking at the incomplete legislation. For instance, here, this is an overview made by our friends from Algorithm Audit, a really great NGO based in the Netherlands. And while the AI Act is only covering what you see on the right side, namely AI systems according to the very limited definition of the AI Act, and we are here in this conference, we're mostly looking at the blue part where you have the general purpose AI applications, or what counts as that. And you have a bit more regulation, really tiny bit more of regulation for higher risk AI. And then you have a small set of prohibited AI, which also has the exclusion that if you use prohibited AI for monitoring refugee or criminals, it is okay again. So there's basically, I think there's nothing in the AI Act you wouldn't find a loophole for. In the Netherlands, all the algorithmic systems that caused damage were not fitting this definition, but were found on the left part. Algorithms that were very simple, decision trees, etc., etc. And we call them impactful algorithms. So within this major bunch of algorithms that can't be called AI according to the AI Act, our civil servants found impactful algorithms that can cause harm without being in algorithmic systems. And they had to develop practices, expertise, and additional regulation for dealing with it. So this is also, again, the shadow work taking place in the back end, so to speak. And the results in the Netherlands, but also elsewhere, we see that in Austria as well, is tangible. For instance, the city of Amsterdam came with the first procurement guidelines for buying artificial intelligence systems. We use routinely in the Netherlands value-sensitive design deliberation to make informed decisions. We use impact assessments. We publish increasingly those impact assessments. We have an algorithm register. It is not great, but it is a start of producing something like transparency that might lead to accountability. We have a very active oversight body, something that we have not talked much about in this conference, but the role of supervisory authorities is essential. We have new practices like advisory panels and committees that help civil servants to do their job better, and do also things in supporting, expanding the agency of civil servants, either through expertise or through communicating directly with the political top leadership. Media reporting. In the Netherlands, we have an excellent tech journalism sector. And if you live in a digital democracy, you need a fourth estate, you need media that are competent and capable in covering have the capacities in covering these issues. Just one example that Michael mentioned, that we were instrumental in that at the data school. Indeed, we formulated one of the first fundamental right impact assessments before they were included in the AI Act, the Fundamental Rights and Algorithms Impact Assessment. It is not mandatory, but because of a motion in Dutch Parliament, in our house, it became a standard practice in the Netherlands and is widely used in the public sector. And in addition, Dutch politicians lobbied hard for the inclusion of so-called FRIAs into the AI Act. So to wrap this up, what we see is a new relationship emerging with algorithmic systems, and that is very tacitly taking place and not visible immediately, just when you start looking for it. And we can divide it into people, practices, and structures, although those overlap. People that might be an algorithm expert that works in the department of Klemens Himpele and is trying to improve the algorithm. It might be an expert body, a panel of experts that are advising a public organization. It might be a structure, a repository where algorithms are documented and can be retrieved. It might be a forum for dispute and or for learning and developing informed decision-making capacities. And I would like, and I'm not the first to coin this, would like to call these people custodians and the practice custodianship and contestation. Custodianship means that you take over the care for algorithmic systems. And that is really important to make that explicit because it's something that you can then budget for. At the moment, people are buying algorithmic systems without thinking that they need care, maintenance, and governance, which all costs time and hence it costs money. And you need people who are trained in it, who develop the expertise and are in networks to exchange knowledge and expertise and best practices with other custodians. And contestations, something these people might engage in as well, but contestation is the critical inquiry about the impacts of algorithmic systems, something that any city council member of this city or any other city should be able to do, to ask critical questions before a municipality opts for, say, implementing an algorithm for automatically sweeping the streets, as we do in Utrecht. It works very well. Or implementing an algorithm for identifying social benefit fraud. None of those worked in the Netherlands, and there were many attempts to do that, even to develop a fair algorithms, and we came to the conclusion maybe there is no such thing as a fair algorithm. So you need the contestation as much as the custodianship. And it is not a designated person, it is really distributed and appears to be an ecosystem and also be fed by an ecosystem and empowered by an ecosystem. If you're more interested in where these thoughts were coming from, I wrote a paper together with my colleague Pekka Mäkelä from Helsinki University, where I was included into the repair project of Minna Ruckenstein. And we describe in this paper how the Netherlands learned from their mistakes and were building new checks and balances for a digital society. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mirko, for this fantastic and precise overview of what can be done. And we come now from the what to the who. And that's your role, Ursula, to tell us a little how this huge transformation, a guy who lived in Austria for a few years and was quoted already today in the first session, talked about the great transformation, how in this great transformation the public service and the leaders are dealing with these issues, and what do they need?
Thank you. 6 minutes, okay. So I have to start with the end of my speech because I'm afraid I will not come to this end. No, thank you for the invitation to this panel. Thank you, Mirko, for this overview. And I will not speak about what doesn't work. I will speak about concepts, how it can work. Maybe it can work. I'm a practitioner in a very huge organization. We have 130,000 people. It's the federal administration in Austria. And what we are facing is a paradigm shift. And if we are facing a paradigm shift, I think we also have to talk about guiding principles. And this is the end of my speech. And now I will give you a short overview only about, I think it's 6 principles we have to mention. First of all, absorptive capacity is more important than mere adaptation. And this is not very easy. Acting in the face of uncertainty is the thing we have to do rather than technological determination. Especially the bureaucracy is not the first mover in technical renewment. We have to implement it in our organization. Skills transfer is rather important than mere training. I think Mirko has spoken about this issue. Learning architecture is rather important than the rollout. Strategic AI literacy is rather important than tool proficiency. And sovereignty through the ability to shape the future is rather important than mere rhetoric of sovereignty. When I speak about public administration and when I'm speaking about this paradigm shift, I'm not starting with the tools, and I have no technical profession. I'm coming from the institution, I'm coming from organizational change, and I am within the administrative practice. And when I'm within this organization, my crucial question is, how can we incorporate, limit and shape AI in ways that are legally sound, organizationally manageable, and create public value? Public administration cannot treat AI simply as a productivity technology, and if you hear the promises, they are full from this kind of view that we can manage our demographic deficits we will have in the next 10 years, and we can rise our productivity. It must justify decisions, clarify responsibilities, correct errors, and remain accountable to citizens. AI can generate text, summarizes, classifications, and recommendations at scale, but administration legitimacy does not come from scale. It comes from procedure, from justifiability, equal treatment, correctability, and trust. Empowering public institutions therefore means distinguishing useful automation from risky delegation and impermissible shifts of responsibility. What are the paradigms I'm focusing, the paradigm shifts I'm focusing? AI changes how administration processes knowledge. The systems produce plausible language, condense information, classify cases, support decisions. It shifts the boundary between preparation, expertise, and decision-making. For public institutions, legitimacy, I love this word, must therefore be secured throughout the process. Who reviewed what, according to which criteria, on what grounds, and with what opportunity for correction. And on the second, the central challenge is not only risk, but uncertainty. We do not know how these systems will develop, how they will reshape routines, which unintended effects will emerge, or which dependencies will become entrenched. The state can neither wait passively nor adopt AI uncritically. Can the output be technically and legally verified? What must remain a human decision? Can the system be stopped or corrected? And who benefits from efficiency gains while who bears the costs of errors or exclusion? Ethics is not accompanying rhetoric. It must become part of procurement, decision-making, and control. So let's talk about strategic human resources management. AI is a human resource issue. The relevant question is not which professions, not only which professions disappear, but which tasks and skills are transformed. AI is especially strong in drafting, summarizing, searching, and so on. This promises relief. But in public administration, these activities are also learning procedures. They teach legal language, case sensitivity, quality standards, and professional judgment. This creates a paradox. What can be automated in the short term may be essential for skill formation in the long term. If AI takes over entry-level tasks, experience sequences disappear as well. Strategic human resources management must therefore assess AI not only by automation potential, but also by its effect on competencies. Which tasks are replaceable, which serve learning, and which involve responsibility because they affect legal consequences, discretion, equal treatment, or trust. 2 minutes. Okay. So I come to the organizational learning capacity. AI requires organizational learning capacities. A poor rollout logic is problematic because AI benefits depend on the context. And therefore, we have to use regulatory sandboxes, not because we have to train innovation habits, but as a governance instrument for uncertainty. We have to put in the new procedures into an observation, and we have to think about the impact they will have to people and to citizens, to staff, and to organization. And leadership must understand AI as a question of strategy and power, and not merely as a tool of competencies. Leaders do not need to explain every model technically, but they must ask the decisive questions. What public value is created? Does AI improve quality, accessibility, and processual safety, and merely increase output? Which skills are devalued and which are newly required? Where does support and responsibility shift begins? And I'm very happy I have brought my end of the speech at the beginning.
Thank you, Ursula. This is also not the end of the workshop. There will be much more input from your side required. Klemens, for your job, I know you are a person you can also be emotional in a positive sense, but most of the time when we meet each other, you are quite calm. And when I see what your tasks are, I sometimes wonder, wow, how does this guy stay calm?
Maybe it's a necessity. Yeah, nice afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the workshop. Thank you for the conference. I think that's a great possibility to talk to each other. To me, it's very important to start with a general remark on technological progress. I think it's very important that we still understand that technological progress is the basis of our wealth. And maybe we should assume that with the new technological possibilities, we all will get richer in the next 20 years or 25 years, and then it's the question who earns what. Yeah? That's of course a big question, but that's not a technological question. I say this at the beginning because sometimes I have the feeling we focus only on the downsides, and there are of course a lot of downsides, but there are also a lot of chances, and I'll come to this later on. The second thing is we are talking about public administration, and the good thing for me as a public officer is that many of the best known pathologies of digitization, like addiction, doom scrolling, outrage amplification, manipulative platform logics, and so on, are not created by public administrations. Why? Because public institutions do not optimize for attention, emotional escalation, or commercial dependency. I want you down from my website. I want you, you have to go to my website. order your passport, be ready in, I don't know, a minute and go away. Yeah, that's what we are aiming for. Yeah, that is very important in the beginning, because a lot of the things we are talking about when it comes to digital humanism has to do with doom scrolling and things like that, and it is nothing which applies originally to the public administration. It of course applies to the city of Vienna, because a lot of people living here are faced with these problems. So what is actually meant by digital humanism? First of all, I think it's very important that digital humanism doesn't become a catch-all label for every current digital policy debate. For example, we had a debate before on digital sovereignty. I think it's a totally important topic, but I think it's a totally different topic. Because you can do doom scrolling tools by open source technology. That's no problem, you can do that. Yeah? I can name a few of the big players, they are open source. That's I think two different topics we are talking about. And digital humanism means shaping technology around human needs, democratic accountability and public value. That's what you said, Ursula, and also Mirko. It starts with a simple insight that the technologies are not neutral. They contain values, interests, assumptions, and therefore they need active governance. So what is the city of Vienna doing? Maybe this was why you were wondering, but try not to be this empathic all the time. Just a few numbers: we have around 10,000 servers in our data centers, 1,500 people working with the IT. The IT we have kindergartens with the passport office, we have hospitals, we have, I don't know, fire workers, we have ambulances, we have, whatever happens in Vienna, we have the street building department, I don't know, whatever, yeah. That means that stability is, of course, one of the most important topics we have with our IT. Because especially when it comes to ambulances and hospitals and so on, we will not argue that half an hour not working is not a problem. It is a big problem, and that's why stability is one of the most important tasks. But we also do a lot of things, and Ursula mentioned that, yeah, where maybe the possibility to correct is enough. If it comes, I don't know, to parking allowances, for example, yeah. If we have all the data we need from you, and you get a parking allowance, you will not complain about that. Because what do we need to know? We need the car, we need your address, and we need the payment. And then we have the information we need, and we can fully automatically give you a parking allowance. And if there is a mistake in the data, it's not a problem to correct it. And the problem you have when it's wrong is not as big as when the hospital is not working. And what's the way we are doing this? That was very interesting, Mirko, you was talking about, I just have the short version, Freya, this tool you have in Amsterdam, if I got it right. We are talking about value-based engineering, but I think it's not so different in the idea what happens. Yesterday in the keynote in the morning, the colleague, she said that evaluation across demographic groups, she said, is rarely done. Yeah? But this is one of the things we do with value-based engineering, because we have let's say, a platform. It's called My Vienna, where you can do if you need a parking allowance, if you need whatever passport, you can go there and apply for it. And I will do it in 2 minutes. And the question was, is it accessible? Do we have everything we need to? We did a 3 days workshop and try to prioritize the values. And this, I think, is an important thing. It's not an absolute thing. I'll give you an example where AI helps a lot and where you have the prioritization of two different important values. When a person comes to a hospital and is not a native speaker, German native speaker, you have the value of data protection, and you have the value that the person understands what happened with his or her body. And of course, you can do organizational frameworks, for example, that if you send it to AI to translate it, it will not be the name in or whatever. But in the end, you have these two values and you have to prioritize it. And I think as a grown-up society, we should focus on these problems. In which case do we decide in which way to use the possibilities technology has? The last point, I often wonder what is blamed to technology. I give you one example. I just mentioned accessibility. I always hear that the formulas online are not accessible. I have just one simple question. Were they accessible when they were on paper? Or maybe the problem is the formula in itself. Yeah, it's not the question if it's online. I mean, of course, there are person without computer. That's a special topic. But but the formula were the same in the paper. The problem is the people do not know what to fill in a field, and we have to reorganize the formulas. Doesn't matter if it's on paper or if it's online. Maybe it's even more accessible for people who cannot leave their home when it's online. But that, by the way, is seldomly discussed. So. To sum it up, I think there's a lot of music in the new technologies. There's a lot of possibilities also for public institutions. Of course, what you mentioned is very important: accountability, transparency. We are rule bound. We have privacy. We have the privacy. We have to be conscious about the privacy. There is no doubt about that. But I think I can say it very proudly that all the public institutions I know are much better than major digital platforms at this. Thank you.
Last not least, Doris, also with the opportunity to directly react to some of the comments and statements being made. Thank you for your contribution. Yes.
Thank you. So I have prepared some slides because I know the acoustics in here are really bad, and I hope this will help you better understand. So the previous speakers, I think, gave a quite encompassing idea of what empowering public institutions can mean. And I want to use the opportunity to zoom in on one little detail, namely the question of human oversight over algorithmic systems, and with that connected, the question of who are we empowering when we're talking about empowering public institutions. Human oversight is about the supervision of algorithmic decision-making by frontline staff usually. So we also talk about human in the loop as the notion that is mostly used for this. There is, of course, research on how does the idea of human in the loop perform out there in the real world. This research mostly comes from human-computer interaction and also psychological research. And those two fields very often focus on the complexity of digital tools and the cognitive limitations of humans. So famously, the so-called automation bias refers to an over-reliance of people on algorithmic decisions. And you have different biases connected to this over-reliance. On the other side, there is research on street-level bureaucracy. And this research talks more about the concrete practices in encounters between citizens and the states. And Mirko has already related to that. So it talks about, basically we can see that attempts of standardization in the digital transformation does not necessarily come with the consequence that we don't have discretion anymore. So there is always room for discretion still at the front line. So what we do see between those two different discourses is that there is a disconnect between the two perspectives. And this disconnect actually shows that we need to look at human oversight as a contextual practice. And this is what this study that I want to introduce actually does. It asks, how does context matter in human oversight? This study is based on really in-depth research, 39 in-depth interviews with 4 local service centers. In specific, they were public employment centers. And these public employment centers used an algorithmic profiling system to suggest what benefits and services job seekers needed. So this is a system that is similar to the AMS algorithm that we know from Austria here. Human oversight was the only mechanism used to verify that if the decisions made by the algorithm were correct. Caseworkers, generally speaking, were very critical about the system itself, and it had been in place for 5 years until it was then finally stopped by a court decision. Caseworkers characterized the system or thought about the system in terms of saying that it is very rigid, that it is a tool produced by some theorists unfamiliar with the public services working conditions, and the automatic results were seen as untrustworthy, unreliable, or even inhuman. But that is the interesting point about this. Still, the caseworkers almost never corrected the algorithmic results. So there's the puzzle. When they were so critical, why did most of the caseworkers say yes to the algorithmically generated results? And the results of this study show that the overreliance, so this automation bias that is always referred to, is not the main issue here. There was a perception of inaccuracy by the caseworkers, but it did not translate into the decision to correct the result. And so this study tries to figure out why this was the case. And it identifies 4 types of contextual factors that influence frontline oversight that you have here in this table. So first we have technology-related factors, which refer in the first place to the level of complexity or simplicity of the technology. In this case that I'm talking about, the simplicity of the system meant that caseworkers could influence the results without amending the decision. And this was achieved by navigating the system's output, by exercising discretion regarding the input, right? So you don't need to change the result when you can work the system in a way that it gives you the result that you want in the first place. This aspect also refers to the question of surveillance, of frontline oversight, right? So you need to play the system if you think that there is surveillance in place that might backfire on you in some sort of way, and I'll come back to that. Then there are policy-related factors. At the frontline, caseworkers typically deal with vague and conflicting policies and regulations. Mirko has already mentioned that. And in the specific case, there were conflicting goals and blame avoidance games. So the relevant ministry tried to gain control in the first place over how decentralized service agencies distribute benefits and services. But without taking responsibility for the algorithm, the ministry namely refused transparency on functionalities of the system, and it did not mention its limitations regarding errors, biases, and its rigidity. It told service centers that corrections are subject to digital surveillance, and later then changed its course by emphasizing the legal responsibility of caseworkers, and then ended up in criticizing them for avoiding corrections. So they really switched during the course of argumentation. And this overlaps also with organization-related factors. Referring to the organizational... No? Is this for me? Okay.
A good 2 minutes or...
Perfect. Referring to the organizational conditions in which oversight is exercised. So this is about office politics, basically, and the role that management plays as intermediaries of human oversight policies. In this respect, the study found significant differences between service centers in terms of the number of corrections. And these differences were clearly due to the politics of management, like from encouraging to make changes to really forbidding to make changes. So this relates to organization culture, hierarchical decisions, decrease the frequency of corrections, and also working conditions in terms of workload, time for each case. And finally, the study found what it calls professionalism-related factors. So this is about the educational background and professional background and training of frontline staff, and also relates to their self-understanding in their job. And this interestingly found that when people have a postgraduate diploma, for example, in counseling or coaching, that this had a significant positive effect on the frequency of corrections. Whereas on the other side, training that was provided by the agency, in fact, had a negative impact on corrections. So this is the main argument that we always have. Training is important, right? So why do I talk about this in such detail? The question that I want to bring up with this is, how can civil servants act as custodians of democratic values? Who needs empowerment to strengthen our democratic institutions? And I believe that this example of human in the loop shows that a people-centered perspective is crucial for the digital transformation. It goes beyond this human in the loop idea, of course, because this only stands at the end of a process of designing and implementing a system. So in this case, a 5-year-long dilemma that created distrust in this institution on the side of citizens and also on the side of caseworkers was finally stopped by court. This could have been avoided if frontline staff had been included in the first place. And this is a little preview of the report that Michael Stampfer mentioned earlier on digital transformation of public administration that we just finished for the Austrian Parliament, and it has some suggestions in how to include civil servants from the start, how to think about bottom-up or to think about the relation between bottom-up participation and strategic framing of getting about this interconnection in order to get progress in digital transformation. Thank you.
Fantastic, many thanks. We make now one round of questions here on the podium, and then it's immediately audience participation, because public sector has to report to the public, and you're the public here. What comes through more or less explicit in all 4 talks, and I'm interested in that, is that the sheer transformation of translocation of analog practices into the digital world is not a recipe for success. So, Ursula, are there any? What are issues and talking points the top civil servants come to the Austrian School of Government regarding organizational issues and how the digital world also transforms century long? Yeah, we always talk about Maria Theresia, who is not, there's only paintings of male presidents in here, no painting of Maria Theresia in this room. With the tradition of the Austrian public administration is long and proud, so it's not easy to change processes into digital ones.
Very simple question and a complex answer. I think one of the opportunities we have is the generation shift we have now. In public administration in Austria, we have lost for about 2 generations of leadership. For example, I'm from the Boomer generation. I'm one of the last with this age. And in my organization, we have the problem that the next generation of management, of leaders, are about, it's no problem. They are about 40, 33, 40, 45. The problem is not that they are young. The problem is that there is no knowledge transformation within the public service. And most of the experts who are talking about AI say now we will solve it with AI. It's okay, but this is the paradox, because I think we have to look at what we have done and what we how we will focus future. For example, in our department, we have some evidence-informed discussions about the paradigm shifts in the past, from the tape writing to the computer to the personal computer to AI. And when we do this research, this thinking about this paradigm shifts, we see that we always have the same patterns. Every cultural change is coming with promises. It will be better, it will be cheaper, and we have not to have so much stuff we can spare. And it's about 100 years, the same. We have these promises to a future, and I have never found a research which says it's true. It was cheaper. It was there was more speed in this organization, and we haven't had this big stuff anymore. So what we can learn together is to talk about these patterns, to talk about paradigm shift, and to have a big network of leaders and managers who are in the responsibility to shape future. And this is what we are doing, and we are doing the same thing we are doing here. We are inviting experts. They inspire the discussion, and each discussion is accompanied with what it's defining. What do we have to do next? And it's a long way we have to go. Sometimes I think we will not have the time for this very famous and very, very important discussions, but I think there is no other way if we don't want to have this technological dependency. We have to speak to each other, and we have to manage the unexpected, because the next crisis will come. There is no substitution for public administration. I'm sorry to say, but look at Venezuela. If there is a crisis, if there is something which affects the country at all, you need public administration, and you need public administration at its best. And I also agree we have to use the technological development so we can incorporate it into the organization, but we have to do it with open-minded, and we have to be aware of our assumptions we have, how it works. And the most important thing we are doing in our I don't want to say that it's learnings, that they are communication sessions, is to improve our own assumptions, to have space for the mind shift. What I'm thinking it's best, maybe it's not the best in the new context.
Thank you very much. Klemens, a lot of catchwords for you. The tech giant says we are the better health administrators. There is the hope from taxpayers and some politicians that AI can make public administration leaner. But there are also some examples of real good transformations into the digital sphere. So if you could perhaps put these three things into one answer.
Yeah, thank you. Also, what Ursula said, I think that's really the important topic. Technological alone is not solving a single problem. It's always a question of the organizational change. That also applies before AI applied, by the way. That's nothing new. It is not about doing processes quicker. You have to bring the processes in order. And that is what often is missed, because you need to have... we tried in the city. We tried with a kind of leadership where the department in charge of the topic and the IT department has a leadership together, because you need both. You need the organizational part in the department, and you need, of course, the technological tools to get more efficient. And these tools are in 98% or something like this, not AI tools. And a lot of things you can do to digitize the public sector without AI. There are also tools where AI will become very helpful, but a lot of things you don't need. Second thing is we have a lot of legal issues. I mean, it sounds so stupid, but what does it mean when we talk always on Verwaltungsreform or on digital transformation of the public administration? We have still laws where is written in that you have to pay cash only. Yeah. Maybe Maria Theresa had no idea that there would come one day where you can pay by card or with online banking. But our lawyers say there is written cash only. That means cash only. Yeah? Bar zu erlegen is the phrase for the German speakers. Yeah? Or we have phrases like anschlagen in our laws. Anschlagen means bring something to a wall. And this doesn't mean a screen, as I learned hardly, because I thought, no problem, I can put a screen on the wall. No. Yeah? Or auflegen, to lay it on the table. Yeah? And this is the process issue and the legal issue you have to clear. AI will not help you at that point. You have really to make clear what do you want, what has to be documented, what is maybe old-fashioned and you don't need to document because you have it in a register. If you have it in a register, you can use it from there. That's the once only topic we are talking about since, 10 years, 15 years. And there is a lot you can do. Where I'm not agree, if I understood you right, is that there is no gains in efficiency. Of course, there could be much more probably when you do the organizational part. But first of all, you have to keep in mind that when it comes to an organization like the city of Vienna, the huge majority of our employees is not administration. They are firefighters, they are kindergartners, they work in the hospital. That's the huge majority. There's only a small amount of our workers really like me working in an administrative job. Yeah? And that is where you have to focus when it comes to the administrative processes. But also if you go out, imagine there wouldn't be a traffic light today and you need officers staying there regulating the traffic. That would be much more expensive than the traffic lights are. And there is a lot of such examples. I totally agree that you need that efficiency is not the only value you can have in a public administration, because you need to be able to scale up in crisis moments. Yeah? And redundancy can be a good thing. Yeah? But it's expensive. Yeah? But it can be a good thing. But you have really to talk about this, and we had a lot of crises in the past decade, so I think we all know what we are talking about. But this, you have to make it clear, and then you have to find a decision where you can say, as I mentioned before, parking permission. Or there's a lot of things like this in a public administration.
Those who are not from Vienna should know that there's an underground Vienna full of tents, medical devices, crisis workers, and so on. And if a crisis occurs and people like Klemens push the button, they all come up and save us. It's the case. The Corona proved it. Within 5 minutes, things were there. Barzahlen, anschlagen, auflegen. Doris, that's not what you mean with meaningful human oversight, I guess. Could you just give us a little more insight how you as a social scientist can interact with public administrations in research projects or advisory roles, and give us one or two examples of these meaningful human oversights in addition to what you just presented.
Okay. First of all, I think I want to say it is rare and valuable situations for me where I do have this direct contact with people from administration.
Doris, all the public administration people here in the room,
Yeah.
book her.
Exactly. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but when I write a report for the parliament, we spent a couple of months. My colleague is also sitting here who worked with me on this project. We have spent a couple of months talking to people, being in workshops and so on, and they are the experts of their practice. So what we can provide is kind of reflective perspective on what we hear from them, but there is always a sort of the fear that we miss something that they already know, and that I don't know, what we suggest might be obsolete because it's already done. So, but despite of that, I think we looking at those practices with a distance makes us see certain things that are not very visible from within being in the business. And what we clearly saw is that there is a lot of effort in coordinating across levels of the federal systems, of coordinating between the ministries, and there are good, what's the word now, gremien in place, like groups in place that try to organize for this cooperation. And it does not immediately become visible that there is a disconnect between the strategic level and the operative level in trying to do transformation in practice. So we have different complaints from different sides of things that don't work. Like, we do want guidelines, strategic guidelines, so that we know what we have to do, is one of the complaints that we hear from the ground, so to speak. On the other side, then when strategic guidelines are made, they don't translate well to putting them into practice, right? And from the outside, then it becomes very visible that you cannot separate those layers, and that cooperation needs to start also from a bottom-up perspective. So I appreciate your perspective and showing what managers and supervisors and everybody has to do. But I think one very important point for me is that we have to listen to the people from the bottom up. And human oversight is only one example to show how important this is.
Thank you very much. Mirko, quick answer to the most difficult questions of it all. Unlearning, yeah? There should be something like the Men in Black thing, where they saw the extraterrestrials and it's away, and there's room for new learning, and you unlearn the old practices. How to do that unlearning of old practices with one example or one short point, then we go to the audience.
Well, I can be short. You're asking me something outside of my direct area of expertise, and I can just say someone from the audience might answer that. But I thought with unlearning, you mean more the fear that people are unlearning their old skills because they're looking at the results produced by an algorithmic system. And there's a good example that this is maybe not the biggest problem. Look at our own area in research. We used to look at hundreds of abstracts or papers to do a systematic literature review. And after, I think people would say after an hour, they start making first mistakes. But I think I fall asleep after the first 20 minutes probably. So now at Utrecht University, they developed a tool called Automatic Systematic Literature Review, AS Review. And that does the job pretty good.
Good.
Super.
Thank you very much. Okay, I've heard the wonderful first speaker has been Sektionschef in a ministry amidst a number of other prominent professional career steps. Please, Christoph, you're the first. There should be a microphone, yes.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Short question, short answer.
Yeah, short question is, Amsterdam is famous for many reasons. One of them is it's one of the first donut economics cities, the donut economy by Great Rayworth. And my question is, how can digital administration by public authorities help to bring about the transition of an economy of a city into a donut economy?
Again, I'm not an economist, so...
Talking about the AI and what the role of AI is in this regard and how it can also help kind of speed up the process of turning it into a circular economy, etc. So it's less about the economics, it's more about what AI and other digital tools can do.
I try to be brief. There are two trends we're seeing in the Netherlands at the moment. We see a group of so-called tech bros asking the government for more money, more funding and deregulation because they claim then we will have a better economy fast. And then we have another area that is an ecosystem that just develops very applicable processes like AS Review at Utrecht University, which is not only used for reviewing scientific papers, but also many other just feasible applications. And I think one reason this is working well in the Netherlands is the close ecosystem where we build, I mean, horrible terms for that, like the triple helix. I get an itch when I hear it, but what we have is really institutions working closely together and researchers that are not only exclusively working inside the university, but working in tandem with other organizations. An example from my own university are the AI labs we have, where we work closely with companies, public organizations. We teach their own employees to become PhD, to obtain a PhD, so they can assume a knowledge position within that organization that helps them to plan further ahead. So I think such ecosystems are vital for that.
The triple helix as genetic aberrations. Thank you for that. Next is here, please, the microphone.
Thank you. Excellent panel. Thank you for the inputs. My question, I'm an urban researcher, and I've been studying successful transformations on 4 continents. And I've been doing hundreds of interviews with administrators, strategists, and so on. But something that I noticed across 4 continents, in all these cases which had this really successful stories of transformation, that the administrators shared some kind of a compelling narrative, something like a vision which is shared among very different institutions. So my question is, isn't it necessary, maybe it's the subtitle, the word ambition, isn't it necessary to have this notion of where it's going? I mean, why empower institutions? In which direction? Does that play a role?
Natural first person to answer that is Klemens, because I think we have something to offer from the Vienna case. And I heard Mirko also already making himself ready for both short answer.
First of all, we have to exchange the business cards later, because there might be very interesting insights in this research also to our work. But the answer, what we try to do in Vienna is more or less this what you mentioned, because in the past it was like starting an IT project. You know, the department say we need whatever ABC, and then the IT started coding, and in the end you had a very expensive IT system nobody likes to use. And then the blame game started. The one hand says the organization is too stupid to say what they really need, and the other say the IT is too stupid to understand what we need. And that's why we started with the creation of a digital strategy for the department, together with IT, us, a CIO office, and the department. And in that one case we did it the last time. It took us almost a year. But this is very good invested time. But the problem is everybody out there, it's like, when do you start? We need, we need the program, whatever. I'm totally sure that by the end of the day, we will be much quicker and much better. But you need to understand what are the organizational constraints? What can they solve in an organizational matter? What do they need us to solve in a technological way? And that's what I meant by a dual leadership in the first round. But this is what we tried, and up to now it worked quite good, not everywhere. Yeah, so we're still trying to understand when does it work, when does it not work. But in the end, if you don't have a commitment from the leadership of the department and a commitment from the IT that they both understand how to work together without blaming each other. And the first thing is they have to understand that in the IT department, there work only geniuses. And in the department, there also work only geniuses because they know exactly what they do in their field of labor. But what they don't understand is how to work together. And this you have to create.
Before Mirko gives
in the city administration, there were only geniuses. That's what I want to say. Yeah?
Definitely. And we were lucky to get in the early 2010s a framework strategy for the city of Vienna, which is still in place, the smart city strategy, with a triangle: less resources, less carbon emissions, innovation and social balance. And digitalization was a strong chapter from the first moment there, yeah, and it's really rewritten every few years. So we have a kind of compass where to put also the digitalization activities. Mirko.
Thank you for the question. I mean, I think such narratives are really important. And in the Netherlands, we have a negative one. We have the child benefit affair, where we pushed using improper and really poorly executed data practices to push thousands of people into poverty because they were innocently accused of being social benefit frauds. And that created a pretext for actually speaking about responsibility. Even a policymaker who doesn't want to speak about AI ethics now has at least to listen. They even can't afford to speak up and to say we take a shortcut here. And there have been repeated mistakes done with algorithms in the Netherlands. So this is why the Netherlands has this strong incentive and focus on building responsible governance practices. And I think this is something that is as sad and terrible the entire child benefit affair was for everybody involved. This is one of the benefits the Netherlands got out of it, that we have now this playing field of saying, you see, there were people severely damaged, children were taken from their families, people committed suicide, and we have still, the Ministry of Finance had to add an entire new directorate just for cleaning up. The social cost, not only the individual cost, but also the public cost of this was so tremendous that you even can make an economic argument for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Joanna, you are next.
Yeah, I have to say first, not only did you do that for the Netherlands, exactly your point. I mean, you know, every life is inconceivable value, but this and the post office scandal in the UK, same story, is how we kept the definition of artificial intelligence for the EU AI Act as broad as we did, because Google and those people say, oh no, be afraid of our new algorithms. So we're like, no, we need to catch these, and everybody got that. But that's not what I raised my hand for, of course. I actually wanted to come back, and this is also a comment, not a question, to what you were saying. In the 1980s, I had this happen too. So one solution to this is the company that hired me away from another company had twice had a failure like this. And so hire someone with a psychology degree to do your programming. Or the new thing is since 2000 is Agile. And I just want to remind everyone, this is part of the Agile manifesto every day. You will never understand, the programmers and users will never understand each other. Even the programmers can't anticipate all of the affordances that their systems will have. So there's new ways of using as well as new roadblocks you might run into or whatever. I remember one day I came out and I overheard the head clerk who was working with us talking to the other clerks, and she said, some things are easy and some things are hard and you cannot possibly guess what they are. You just should ask the programmers for everything. So anyway, strongly recommend people actually read the 2000 Agile Manifesto and not just talk about Agile governance without reading it.
Next. Okay, then we start now.